to TVD's age as a company.
I don't know what she meant. This is what she told me. That's all what I know.
Can you speculate to the fact that as you were talking about TVD's birthday party, that these comments were made about TVD in itself?
Objection, speculation.
Sustained. You included it in your question.
Yeah, I know. So let's talk about, during Direct, you were talking about other employees and how they are getting in trouble breaking policy, is that correct?
Yes.
And the cases you brought up, one was about sexual assault,
Mm-hmm.
the other was about showing up to the office drunk.
Mm-hmm.
Are these in regards to a right job performance at all?
These are not, but I also told about a writer who plagiarized the work.
And is plagiarism at all apparent in slandering a advertiser? Are they connected in any way?
Objection, lack of personal knowledge.
I think that
Your response?
my response is that as a secretary at TVD and as a avid consumer of media and as a witness to the business of TVD, Mr. Lin can speculate to as the business aspect of what writers and editors and TVD magazine can do.
May I respond?
You may.
Your Honor, it was never established that Mr. Lin actually reads the articles produced by TVD. Furthermore, it's not necessarily established that he is aware of the content that TVD produces, even though he is a secretary. So I do not see how he would have any knowledge of how a particular article would impact the company.
Your objection is sustained.
Mr. Lin, is slandering an advertiser and plagiarizing a work the same thing?
I mean,
Objection, lack of personal knowledge.
Sustained.
Moving on. You listened to many of the conference calls that Ms. Shaw made between Ms. Perez, Ms. Martin, and the head of the business sector, is that correct?
yes, I did.
And you took many notes.
Yeah, I do take notes.
And these decisions were about many things, about TVD, including hiring and firing decisions.
Yeah, conference calls were for hiring and firing.
And during any of these conference calls, was age ever mentioned as a factor in the hiring and firing decision?
No, age wasn't mentioned explicitly, but then I don't know why. Photos were always requested. I mean, it was a must to have a photo.
See, so after Riley Winter published the article about Turntable, you were afraid that Riley Winter was going to be terminated, is that correct?
I was afraid.
You expressed concern
Yeah, yes, I do. I did express a bit of a concern.
because you understand that advertisers are sacred to TV, is that correct?
Objection, lack of personal knowledge.
If I may,
Sustained.
so just to reiterate, you expressed concern to another secretary at TBD that Riley Winter may be fired over her article about Turntable.
Yeah, I kind of had a concern about that.
No further questions now.
No redirect, Your Honor. At this point, I would like Mr. Lin to step down from the stand.
Does plaintiff have any more witnesses to call?
Yes, Your Honor. At this point, plaintiff would like to call Dr. Sam Owens to the stand. May I proceed?
You may.
Can you please introduce yourself to the court?
The name is Owens, Dr. Sam Owens.
Dr. Owens, what do you do for a living?
I'm a distinguished professor at Midland State University. You know, I take pride in molding students that want to succeed in their academic field.
How are you then related to today's case?
I was retained by Riley Winters in order for me to investigate her termination at the hands of TBD. I wanted to see that at that time of her termination, that TBD was following standard procedures in the Human Resource Department.
Before we talk deeper about your involvement and investigation in this case, let's talk about you.
So I earned my bachelor's and master's from SUNY University. Then I decided to go to Harvard. I wanted to earn my PhD in management, which I did. Then I spent some years traveling abroad and investigating cases about AIDS discrimination in other places like Syria and such.
Are you published in your field of expertise?
Of course, I've published over 35 different peer-reviewed articles, 20 of which actually deal with AIDS discrimination within the workplace.
In the past, have you ever been asked to testify as an expert witness in a court proceeding?
Yes, I have.
Let's talk about your involvement in this case. First of all, were you able to come to a conclusion for us?
Yes, I was.
To come to your conclusion, Dr. Owens, did you have a sufficient facts and data?
Yes, I did.
What are those facts and data?
Sure. So it's standard in my field to use this type of investigation called document analysis, where we gather different documents and then we analyze if there's any trends that happen based on research that has happened before. So let's say if there's some research that indicates that something in the people's policy might lead to an increase in this type of discrimination, I'll look into those documents, see if those trends appear, and then I'll try to make a judgment based off of that.
Is the method you mentioned there, document analysis, a method commonly relied upon by experts in your field to come to a conclusion?
Of course, it's the most common and most relied upon.
Did you reliably apply that method to your facts and data to come to the conclusion?
Yes, I did.
Before we move on to talk about your conclusion, let's talk about TBD. Did you analyze the staff of TBD?
I looked into TBD's human resource department, and I found that a lot of their staff didn't have the training required to be in that department.
But why is that problematic?
Well, different research has shown that if the staff of a company isn't involved or doesn't know about a certain type of discrimination, such as age discrimination, they tend to have a harder time identifying it and expressing it to their employees, so they have a harder time also dealing with it.
What about the HR department of TBD in general? What did you find about HR department?
Well, when I looked up to the HR department of TBD, I noticed that the person in charge of it, Sky Martin, had no previous training when it came to human resource management, which really was concerning to me.
Did you review any documents about the HR department?
Yes, I did. I reviewed the TBD People's Policy.
If you were to be shown that document today, would you be able to recognize it?
Of course,
Permission to approach the bench, which is evident, and approach the witness with the same state was exhibit 3.
thank you.
Dr. Owens, what did I just hand to you?
You handed me the TBD People Policy.
Is that a fair and accurate copy?
Yeah, it is.
Dr. Owens, what can you, as an expert, tell us, the general public, about this document?
Sure. So when I was looking at the TBD's People Policy, analyzing it, there wasn't anything too nuanced about it, nothing out of the ordinary. It covers classes such as sex and gender, but when I looked further into it, I noticed that they didn't have a clause that specifically stated age discrimination, which is really concerning for me, because research shows that if a certain type of discrimination is not stated directly, of course people will not know how to identify it and will not know that it's happening in the workplace.
But the clause number 4, I believe, mentioned about other characteristic under state and federal law.
Correct, but that's not the problem. So while it may be under state and federal law, unless it's explicitly stated, most people will not know what is protected under that class. And that's what I was concerned about. So age was not explicitly stated in this People's Policy.
Aside from that, what do you find about the hiring and firing policy at TBD?
Sure, so again, when I looked at the TBD People Policy, I noticed that they had their policy on hiring and firing was supposed to be done in an objective manner, but when I reviewed other documents that I was given, I noticed that TBD was not following that. They weren't following an objective hiring and firing policy.
Permission to approach the witness, Richard, have been intended to the bench. Lastly, Dr. Owens, what is your final conclusion for us?
Sure. So usually when I look at different companies, I want to make sure that they have 3 crucial things that I've mentioned before. One, I want to make sure they have an objective hiring and firing policy. I need to make sure that the staff that's in charge of the human resource department has the correct training, and I need to make sure that the policy or the type of discrimination that's going on in that workplace is specifically stated in their people's policy. And after reviewing several documents in TBD, I found out that the company wasn't following any of those three crucial things that are needed to avoid discrimination.
But then, how is your conclusion related to today's case?
So I concluded from all the different research in my own investigation that Riley Winter's termination at the hands of TBD was more likely than not due to age discrimination.
Thank you, Dr. Owens. No further question at this time, Your Honor.
May I proceed, Your Honor? Dr. Owens, you came to a number of conclusions in today's case, isn't that correct?
Yeah, I did.
And one of those conclusions was that Ms. Shaw used various code words for age discrimination, isn't that correct?
Yeah,
And isn't it correct that one of the examples you pointed out was Shaw's desire for energetic and vigorous workers?
right, yes. So different studies have shown that their oftentimes employees tend to describe youthful workers as energetic and full of life, while older employees are described as being less energetic.
So when you're saying when Ms. Shaw mentioned workers who are energetic and vigorous, what she really meant is workers who are youthful, correct?
Objection, speculation.
Your Honor, I'm merely asking for the witness's opinion based on this report.
Your Honor, the question specifically is, when you mention that, it means Ms. Shaw's think of what? And that is call for speculation from Dr. Owens.
Your response?
My objection, my response stands, Your Honor.
Your objection is sustained.
Now, Dr. Owens, isn't it possible that phrases like energetic and vigorous could be applied to workers of any age?
Well, it is possible. It's more likely that whenever management describes these type of people, they're usually describing to an age group, as different studies have shown. When they describe this type of people, they usually describe people of younger age.
So that's yes. Phrases like energetic and vigorous could be applied to workers of any age.
Of course it can, but most likely not.
And isn't it true that employers want to hire workers who are energetic and vigorous?
Excuse me, can you repeat the question?
Isn't it true that employers would generally want to hire workers who are energetic and vigorous?
Objection, lack of personal knowledge.
Your response?
Your Honor, as a doctor of business from Harvard, I think Dr. Owens would have an idea of what kind of workers employers want to hire.
Your Honor, may I respond to that?
You may.
Your Honor, this case specifically about TB. Dr. Owens definitely is an expert on management. However, to be able to speak case by case specifically is not on expertise of Dr. Owens.
Your response?
Your Honor, I'm not asking for Dr. Owens to state whether or not TBD hired workers who are energetic and vigorous. I'm saying whether or not in general employers want to hire workers who are energetic and vigorous.
Your objection is overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
You're not going to restate my question?
Yeah.
Please. Isn't it true that employers would generally want to hire workers who are energetic and vigorous?
Of course, yeah. So employers want to hire people that are vigorous and all that stuff. They'd also want to hire people that are experienced and knowledgeable in different fields. I can't say. Different companies look for different things in employees. Some look at age, some look at to see their experience, some want youthful people.
Now, shifting gears, Dr. Owens, in making your report, did you read any of Riley Winter's articles?
I believe I did.
You did.
I believe so.
Could you name any of these articles?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Isn't it true that at the time Ms. Riley Winter was fired, she was an at-will